Thank you and welcome to the show this morning. The topic this morning is AIDS and white females. And we have to talk about AIDS and white females, Miss Debbie Runions. Miss Runions is an AIDS prevention educator. And of course, Miss Runions, let me welcome you to the show this morning.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
And we are glad to have you here, primarily because we've talked about this disease of AIDS on so many occasions, and I think we've had an opportunity to talk about the impact that it has had on the African American community, the impact that it is having on black females and whatnot, but we've never had an opportunity to talk about the impact that this disease is having specifically upon white females. And we're simply encouraged by the fact that you being an AIDS prevention educator have agreed to talk to us about that today. But before we get into that, Mrs. Runyon, let's see if we can have you to give us some information about your background, your education, and some of the things that eventually led you to become an AIDS prevention educator.
Okay, I am from Humphreys County. I'm a Tennessee native, born and raised in Waverly, married my childhood sweetheart. He died in a car accident when he was 32. We'd been married 12 and a half years. And I had married the first boy I ever went out with, so it took me a while to decide to date. I had 2 young children. But when I did, it was in the 80s, and we were just beginning to hear about this disease, but it was never talked about as something that a woman should worry about. So in 1989, I met the man who shared the virus with me. I did not become infected until 1992 from one exposure. And everything changed. I am a journalist by profession, and I was working with the Tennessee Business Roundtable, which is a group of CEOs across the state of Tennessee. And because I was already a journalist, I thought, and I also taught journalism at Nashville State, I thought I am in a perfect position to go public with this. I was the first person I'd ever known to become infected. And I think I was the first person a lot of people had known. I wrote for the Tennessean on a fairly regular basis. My picture came with my column. And so a lot of people knew who I was. And because I write about personal things, they knew my family. And so it seemed to me to be the right thing to do to go public. I asked my children first because there is a social stigma that goes with being infected, and I knew that it would reach down and touch my children, and I didn't want to do that to them without their permission. So that's what I did. They thought it was a good idea, and I began speaking. I didn't know how to speak, but I was a journalist, so I knew how to tell a story. And it turned out that because I was one of the first women to go public in the state of Tennessee, that I moved very quickly into the public arena and moved on up to the national level. After only 3 speeches, I was asked if I wanted to apply for President Clinton's advisory council. It had not been created yet. He was just trying to pick. And I said, well, sure. So I did, and my chances, there were about 800 people who applied for 30 positions, and I was chosen. I think it might have had something to do with Al Gore being from Tennessee.
Okay, very good. Okay, it probably did. It probably did.
But people asked me how that happened. I said, I don't know. But that might have had something to do with it.
And so you became involved in it from a national point of view, that is, working directly with a presidential commission in a real sense, dealing with this as a disease.
Yes.
What were some of your thoughts? And we're just about ready for our first commercial break. We've got about 50 seconds. But let's start off by giving us some of your thoughts in reference to your responsibilities on that particular commission, and then we'll pick it up after the break.
Okay. I was On the prevention committee, I work specifically with young programs for young people because of what I do here. I work for the Tennessee Department of Education on a grant from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to talk to kids across the state about HIV. And because that was my little part of expertise, that's the one I was on, the committee I was on.
Very good. And of course, let us make preparations for this first commercial break here, Ms. Runions, and then we'll come back and talk about other aspects. And we'll be back with our audience following this very, very short commercial break. Show for the morning.